It's amazing how many people, like Cal, the old planning director, he went the whole time without. Yeah, pretty much. Hey, Jimmy. Good, how are you? Good. You too. Not as much as not quite as much as he used to, but he might if he sees like a certain story or something tune in. But he's still following along for sure. But he cared about it. I mean, it wasn't just a job to him, and so he still cared. So. Still read stuff. Yeah. This is, yeah. Yep. Sure.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
It's the same. Let's see. I don't know.
Okay. I just thought
Oh, I had the charger here. Oops. Well, hello, everybody. It's wonderful to see so many faces here live, and I imagine that there are more. I'm waiting to to call in through Zoom, but welcome. We'll go ahead and call this meeting to order, and we'll start with the invocation, which we observe by a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, will you call the roll?
Bajent.
Here.
Clegg.
Here.
Halliburton.
Here.
Sanchez.
Here.
Thompson.
Here.
Woodings.
Here.
All present.
Thank you. And next up, we have a request for approval of the city council meeting minutes from June 29th.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I move approval of the regular evening meeting minutes from June 29th, 2021.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Clerk, will you call the roll?
Sanchez.
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Woodings.
Yes.
Bajent.
Yes.
Clegg.
Yes,
Halliburton.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thanks. There's no special business, so we have the consent agenda. All items with an asterisk are considered to be routine by the council and will be enacted by one motion. There's no separate discussion on these items unless a council member or citizen so requests, in which case the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered in its normal sequence.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I've been asked by a citizen to remove resolution 299-21 from the consent agenda.
And so will you move approval of all
Yeah.
but that?
Yes, so having removed that, I move approval of the consent agenda as presented with the exception of resolution 299-21.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Oh, nope.
Madam Mayor, there was an item on the consent agenda,
I'm sorry.
final plat that we need removed.
There were two items on the consent agenda to remove. I apologize. There was also a subdivision number 4, Rose Street Townhomes, that we've been asked to remove.
Number 4. Okay,
And with that, I would move approval of the consent agenda with the exception of the resolution and the subdivision that have been removed.
Second,
we have a motion and a second. Clerk, will you call the roll?
Sanchez,
yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Woodings,
Yes.
Agent,
Yes.
Clegg,
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
So Madam Mayor, I guess we should take up this resolution now. The subdivision is being deferred till later.
Okay, so we're not considering that tonight.
Yeah.
Okay.
The resolution is a resolution to approve as to both form and content, an agreement to transfer potential credits by and between the city of Boise City Department of Parks and Recreation and the Treasure Valley Canopy Network, authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute an attest said agreement on behalf of the city of Boise and establishing an effective date. This resolution approves creating green credits for our tree canopy. I'm sorry, I'm trying to pull up the exact wording here. I apologize. So the agreement is to transfer potential credits from our tree canopy to the Treasure Valley Canopy Network. And in return, we would receive some payment based on the value of the green credits that they create based on a variety of things such as carbon dioxide storage, stormwater runoff, energy savings, fish habitat, and air quality benefits. The resident who asked me to pull this off had a series of questions, so if I might, I'd like to address those questions. They were particularly about trees that the city has agreed to plant as part of the City of Tree Challenge in forests around Idaho. We have a goal of planting 235,000 trees around the state. And the first question is what size of tree will be planted. In this case, if you look at the excuse me, at the City of Tree Challenge, you'll see that these are seedlings or saplings, not big trees, but just seedlings. The location, the resident is asking where they'll be located and whether or not they'll be planted in areas subjected to logging or vegetation treatments. The answer to that is we don't know exactly where they will be planted. We know that every year we will look at opportunities and they will be based on reforestation of areas that have burned or potentially areas that have been infested by insects. And those might, in fact, sometimes be part of partnerships with other nonprofits in the state for various stewardship agreements. They may occasionally be on private land if that private land is land that needs to be rehabilitated. But they will not be on lands that have been logged, and the planting will not replace trees that have been logged. Probably more to the point, the credits themselves will be all be based on trees that are planted in city parks. And if you look through the resolution and the accompanying documents, you'll see a list of the city parks that those trees are in, as well as a list of the kinds of trees. Given all of that, I'm convinced that this will be a benefit to the city, both financially and in terms of energy and carbon savings. And it will also be a benefit to the community because of those same things. And certainly welcome any citizen who has concerns as this project goes forward to review what we've been doing, how we've been doing it, and make suggestions if they have such for improvements. And with that, I would move approval of resolution 299-21.
Second,
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion?
Madam Mayor,
Yeah, go ahead.
I also reviewed the citizens' letter and questions, and I guess the simplest takeaway that I saw was there was concern that these types of trading can potentially, in some situations, cause trees to be planted on private lands or cause trees to be planted on commercial timber property. And the citizen was concerned that that might happen here. I don't see that as a reason to say, no, we're not going to do it at all. I see it as a reason to keep a close eye on what we're doing. And I know that people will, and I know that we will as well. So I'll be supporting the motion.
Kind of. Thanks, Madam Mayor. I think that my concern was much different than the citizens' concern. And my concern really played more into, as we're pursuing our own carbon goals, how does selling credits to other entities perhaps end up costing us more in the long run than keeping those credits internal to the city and internal to our goals? So I will be watching this very closely for that reason, and making sure that we don't get upside down on what we're, if at some point we have to buy carbon credits, that we're not selling our carbon credits, buying other carbon credits at the expense of the taxpayer.
Thank you.
All right, with that, clerk, will you call the roll?
Sanchez,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Woodings,
Yes.
Bajent,
Yes.
Clegg,
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
All right, we are moving into second reading.
Madam Mayor, I ask unanimous consent that all ordinances on the second reading calendar be read by number and title only and filed for the third reading calendar.
Without objection.
ORD 33-21, an ordinance CAR 21-00007 for property located at 2222 South Broadway Avenue, amending zoning classifications of the city of Boise City to change the classification of real property particularly described in section 1 of this ordinance and adjacent rights of way from R-1C Single Family Residential to C-1D Neighborhood Commercial with Design Review, setting forth a reasoned statement in support of such zone change and providing an effective date. ORD 34-21, an ordinance CAR 20-00021 for property located at 3153 West Hawthorne Drive and 4306 West Taft Street, amending zoning classifications of the city of Boise City to change the classification of real property particularly described in section 1 of this ordinance from R-1AS Single Family Residential with Sycamore Neighborhood Overlay to R-1CSDA Single Family Residential with Sycamore Neighborhood Overlay and Development Agreement, setting forth a reasoned statement in support of such zone change and providing an effective date.
Thank you. And now third reading.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think there will be a number of comments on approval, but first I would move that further reading of ORD 3621 be dispensed with and the record reflect that it's been read for the third time in full.
Second.
Clerk, will you call the roll?
Sanchez,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Woodings,
Yes.
Bajent,
Yes.
Clegg,
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries. ORD 21-21, an ordinance repealing Boise City Code Title II, Chapter 10, and enacting a new Title II, Chapter 10, Boise City Code entitled Office of Police Accountability, providing a title, establishing the Office of Police Accountability, providing a mission statement and goals, setting forth appointment of director, scope of authority, independence of the Office of Police Accountability, access to information and records, and cooperation, specifying duties and responsibilities of the Office of Police Accountability, outlining transparency and reporting requirements, confidentiality of records and information requirements, and false report procedures, and provide an effective date.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I move that ORD 3621 be approved.
Second.
Point of order. We're actually on ordinance 21-21.
Sorry. 30,
21.
Ordinance 3621
I'm
is
sorry.
in the next section.
ORD 2121.
Second.
Mhm.
Motions, I am.
Mhm.
You read it,
Yes.
correct? Yes. So,
Yeah.
all right, now it's time to discuss.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, this is the ordinance to repeal and replace our Office of Police Oversight with an Office of Police Accountability. I think it's important for the public to know that there are lots of reasons to do this. We think it strengthens the office, and that was the whole point of it. The first is independence. This ordinance very clearly gives the Office of Police Accountability authority to independently investigate, review, and audit police conduct. The other is access. It also very clearly gives the Office of Police Accountability the power to access any records in the Office of Internal Investigations at the Police Department or other police records. And then accountability. This ordinance provides frequent and thorough reports to the mayor and council and to the public so that the activities of the office will be more transparent. We wanted to standardize the investigations and make sure that with that standard of investigation, know that the public would have access to the records of those investigations, and because they were standardized, be able to understand what the outcomes were, what the trends were, as well as the leadership, mayor and city council. We wanted to ensure that the office had real-time auditing rather than reviewing closed reports all the time. They have more direct power to review those reports in real time as they were happening. We wanted a full-time director position with investigative skills so that the public knew that there was a person who was going to be there, who they could report to, they could file complaints with, and that they could talk to about police accountability at any time. And we wanted some flexibility. This new ordinance, we think, offers the office the ability to also do independent investigations and outreach to the community in a way that meets the needs of the communities. And then finally, we wanted to mandate a review of certain critical incidents. And in those certain critical incidents, ensure that the office always asks a question about whether this one should be one that was up for an independent review or not. And so I think that the changes in this ordinance do that. From first reading to today, there was some minor changes made in the language just to clarify even more that this office is an independent office that's not subject to mayor or council or police telling them what and when they can investigate. And with that, I'm very supportive of moving forward with this ordinance, assuming that as we move forward and as we hire the new director of the Office of Police Accountability, that director will begin outreach to the community and will return to us within 6 months with a review of the ordinance to make sure that we didn't miss something that needs to be fixed, but also with conversations from the community that inform us of the policies and procedures that they'd like to bring forward to make the office even more effective. And so with that, I'll be supporting this ordinance.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
I'm not going to add too much to what Council President Clegg already said. I think she hit the nail on the head on most of those things. We've had a tremendous amount of folks reach out from the community on this, and our CE department, our community engagement department has done a great job at getting feedback as well. Kind of towards just this last week, we did have some folks reach out with some concerns about removing the OPO or the OPA director's discretionary authority to do an investigation. I think with like Council President Clegg said, a few minor wording changes, we were able to provide some clarity of what the intention was there. With that clarity, I feel very comfortable approving this and excited to see it go forward. I think that this is a new position, a new department. And so there will be some changes along the line. I think that those 6-month and beyond opportunities for us to get reports back to evaluate the job, the role, and what's going on here is extremely important. And I think that we're all committed to doing that. So I'm in favor of this motion.
Madam Mayor. Thank you, Madam Mayor. During our recent work session, I asked about one of the concerns that the public expressed when they completed the survey about the Office of Police Oversight / Accountability. And one of those was anonymity. And so I did check with legal about that. And yes, it's my understanding that people who file complaints can do that anonymously. So hopefully that will alleviate some of those concerns. One of the issues that folks brought up as well is wanting to have a public hearing to discuss this ordinance. I just want folks to understand that these ordinances, they're alive, they're living. And as we move forward with the ordinance, as Councilmember Halliburton said, we will be looking to see how this works. And there might be some things that we need to tweak. For example, the rental application fee ordinance that we passed a couple of years ago, we're tweaking that a little bit so that it can work better for our community. So with that, I just want to thank anybody who has decided to move forward and despite the fear, has let the city of Boise know that there might be issues. I know it's not easy, as is borne out in the survey. People do it even though they're afraid, even though they may not completely understand the process. And it does take courage to file a complaint, even when you're anonymous, because I don't think people don't want to do that. They don't want to complain. People don't like to complain. But in order for us to be the entity that can best serve our community, we do need to know when there are issues. And so with that, I am happy to support this ordinance.
Madam Mayor, I just want to start by thanking staff and your office for working very, very hard with council leadership over, gosh, it's been like a year and a half since we really started looking at this and looking at how we create an Office of Police Accountability that's really responsive to our residents' needs, that has a high level of visibility in the community that people were asking for, I think, a lot more last summer. And, there was a point where people were asking, well, where do we file a complaint? Because nobody knew where that office was or how to go through that process. And so I really hope that this accomplishes our goal of making that clear to the community. And I think, like Council Pro Tem Sanchez said, this is a living ordinance. And one of the questions that I asked during our work session was, are we going to be surveying folks who actually file complaints at the conclusion of their case to make sure that they were satisfied with the outcome, satisfied with the service that they received, and perhaps to gain more ways to make the process better and make policy changes to that end. So I'm happy to support this. I appreciate the changes that have happened just over the past couple of weeks to make this ordinance even that much better. And I look forward to continuing to look at this ordinance, making sure that it's serving its purpose. And if it's not, making the necessary changes to ensure that our community has somewhere to go when they need to file a complaint, that they feel safe, that they feel heard, and that they feel that their concerns are real and valid and serious.
Madam Mayor. Yeah, thank you. I'll be brief. I agree with all the points that have been made. And I just also want to really thank your office, your work, council leadership's involvement in this and all the staff time that's gone into it. It's while it is, as noted, a living kind of a living document, living department as we go forward. I appreciate how the amount of time that was taken to ensure that we ended up with, I think, something really good and unique to the needs of Boise. And so I want to thank you for that. I just want to emphasize what I really like about this new department is its independence. And I have great comfort with the safeguards that have been put in that regard with this new department. And I think that our citizens can have share in that confidence as well. Thank you.
All right, it looks like there's no more. I'll just weigh in. I won't be voting, but I really appreciate the time that was taken by staff to get us to this point and the guidance and staff time and support that we got from them, but also the community that made it clear a year ago that they needed, as Councilmember Wooding said, to know where to go. That they wanted, as you saw in the survey earlier today in the work session, to know that there was an accountability mechanism because that holds us all where we ought to be. And as we worked through learning from the public what they were looking for, we worked through this ordinance. We did want to make sure the independence piece that we're highlighting tonight. We wanted to make sure that the director of this office could himself or herself request an independent investigation, that it wouldn't be prevented by anybody from this dais. And that's the independence that we all believe is really important. And the language was changed to show that was our intent all along, but to make that clear. And then importantly too, this is, as Councilmember Sanchez said, a living ordinance. And so as we hire a director now for this new Office of Police Accountability, and we expect that person to go out to pick up the work that we heard from Maria today, the survey on what the residents wanted, but to drill deeper, to make sure that they're helping us create an Office of Police Accountability that's responsive to the expectations and needs of the community, that delivers the information that everybody deserves when it's sought after, and that ultimately helps us come up with the right policies and procedures moving forward, not only for the office, but through those investigations that it does. And so now that we're at this point, 6 months from now, we'll have a checkup, but I fully expect that we'll see from a director proposed policies, procedures, and how they will be accountable to the public in terms of closing investigations and sharing reports, as well as policy recommendations, even sooner than that. And thank you all for your partnership in this.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Woodings.
Yes.
Bajent.
Yes.
Clegg,
Yes,
Halliburton.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Madam Mayor, just to be clear, since we didn't have a motion on this part, I would move that we ask the new director of the Office of Police Accountability to return to us within 6 months of that person's hire with a report on the ordinance, on the partnering that they've done with the community, and on policies and procedures.
Second.
The motion and second, further discussion? Clerk?
Sanchez,
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Woodings.
Yes.
Bajent.
Yes.
Clegg,
Yes,
Halliburton.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. So we will now move into public hearings. The first step is a hearing on airport revenue bonds, series 2021B.
Hi, thank you. I'm Kathleen Watkins, Deputy Director of Finance at the Boise Airport. The last several years, the airport's seen large year-over-year increases in passenger traffic, and in 2019, we ran out of capacity.
could you pull the mic
Oh.
down just a bit? Thanks.
Too short?
You
that
know,
better?
it's also been just a little finicky tonight, so talk into it again, but it might be that we have to
Is this
adjust.
better?
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. I can even hear myself. Okay. So Kathleen Watkins, Deputy Director of Finance for the Boise Airport. For the last several years, the airport's seen large year-over-year increases in passenger traffic. And in 2019, we ran out of capacity in our closed-in terminal parking. This required us to shuttle passengers to our remote economy lot. And the airport, prior to the pandemic, was preparing to construct parking garages to handle the increase in passenger traffic that we're seeing. Then when the pandemic started, we of course slowed down the construction and took a halt to see what was going to happen. But recently the air traffic has come back very strong. We are approaching now our 2019 passenger levels and have once again opened our economy lot and have begun shuttling passengers and employees to that lot. So what we're asking for today is we have two bonds for consideration. The first is a bond to build a 5-level public parking facility. It's approximately 410,000 square feet in size, and there are 1,150 total stalls. The garage is going to be located just north of the terminal, right next to the existing parking garage, and it's going to be replace one of the surface lots that we had there. The terms of that bond are not to exceed 30 years and $45 million. Also included in that bond is a refunding of a 2012 bond that we used to build the first parking garage. Refunding that now will save us over $1 million over the remaining life of the bond. The second bond is a 5-level employee parking facility that will be located to the northwest of the current parking garage within walking distance of the terminal to be used for airport employees, but also concessionaire employees, airline employees, et cetera. And that's going to also be a 5-level employee garage. It's approximately 233,000 square feet, 703 stalls. The terms of that bond are not to exceed 30 years and $22 million. All bonds from the Boise Airport are paid from existing general airport revenues. No taxpayer dollars are used. Since it's for private use, the employee parking garage falls under the Tax Equity and Fiscal Responsibility Act. And that act requires that that employee parking garage be open for public comment before the council approves the ordinance or adopts the ordinance. Also, we request that you adopt this ordinance and waive the 3 reading rule. And I'm here for questions, of course.
Madam Mayor, thank you so much for your presentation. I just have a question about the kind of timing. So I remember pre-pandemic, we were getting ready to build an employee parking garage. Like you guys were pretty ready. Had we just not quite gotten to the point where we were ready to approve a bond, or what kind of happened with that?
So we had some funds in a reserve that the airlines had been setting aside for a number of years. We still have that reserve, but we're holding that to help the airlines stabilize their rates. We decided to bond it instead. But it was just ready to go. We were had almost approved the RFP, and literally days before we realized what was happening with the pandemic, and we stopped. So that's where we are on now.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that history.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Not so much a question, but a comment. As the liaison to the Airport Commission, the commission made the choice not to go forward with this garage earlier because of the downturn due to COVID. But the original conversation was that this might get put off for 2 or 3 years. I'm happy to see it back as soon as it is. And I think we have a real opportunity to get these bonds sold at a rate that will help us over the long term on debt service and get these garages built.
All right. Well, this is a public hearing. Is anybody here to testify on this matter? Is anybody online?
No, Madam Mayor.
All right. The record will reflect that nobody's online either. And so we will go ahead and close this public hearing.
Madam Mayor, I believe because this is an ordinance that the action would be that we move ordinance 3621 to the reading calendar. Is that correct?
Yes.
Madam Mayor, this is actually an expedited reading.
I didn't hear that.
Oh, so are we doing 3 readings tonight?
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Great.
Oh,
Thank you.
all right. Well, with that then, Madam Mayor, I move that all rules of the council interfering with the immediate consideration of ORD 3621 be suspended, that the portions of Idaho Code 5902 required an ordinance to be read on 3 different days, twice by title and once in full, be dispensed with, and that the records show it has been read for the 3rd time in full.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Clerk, will you call the roll?
Sanchez,
Yes.
Thompson, Woodings,
Yes.
Bajent,
Yes.
Clegg,
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries. ORD 36-21, an ordinance of the city of Boise City, Ada County, state of Idaho, authorizing the issuance, sale, and delivery of up to $45 million principal amount of the city's airport revenue and revenue refunding bonds, Series 2021A, Public Parking Facilities Project, and up to $22 million principal amount of the city's airport revenue bonds, Series 2021B, Employee Parking Facilities Project, and authorizing execution and delivery of a trust indenture and an official statement and related documents relating to the construction, acquisition, and installation of certain parking facilities, making findings in connection therewith, ordering publication, approving the summary of the ordinance, providing for a waiver of the reading rules, and providing an effective date.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I move that ORD 3621 be approved.
Second,
We have a motion, a second. Clerk, will you call the roll?
Sanchez,
yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Woodings.
Yes.
Bajent,
Yes.
Clegg,
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
All right, before we jump into this one, I know this is unusual because it's an early break, but we're going to take a quick break, no more than 5 minutes. And then we'll go ahead and start with BVA. Crystal Rain's saying that you're muted.
Okay. I guess somebody would need to
Oh,
I don't have the power to
I saw somebody,
mute myself.
I saw somebody unmuting, so something happened.
I
You're
muted
good.
somebody muted me. Sorry. I think it's important to note that the development, it's new technology all the time. The development agreement will apply to all of the property included in the annexation. The annexation itself is requested in anticipation of a largely industrial development. The industrial park has the potential for nearly 1 million square feet of usable space. And then the commercial zoning is intended to provide accessory uses or accessory space to support the park. I think it's also important to recognize that with the surrounding area, there's an opportunity to provide a transition to the Syringa Valley development previously annexed to the west. You can see on the slide kind of the relationship between the two properties. To date, no public agency has expressed opposition to the annexation. They've also given no indication that the property could not be appropriately served. Again, it is surrounded on 3 sides by previously annexed lands, and incorporating the site will not require significant expansion in service area for the provider. However, there is one significant exception. It is outside the 1.5 mile distance preferred by the fire department. That was noted in your report. Fire acknowledged, though, that the area is already, they are already serving lands beyond the subject property. But with that, they did recommend that the applicant dedicate a 2 to 4 acre site for construction of a new station. Further, they suggested this occur before any development beyond that first phase of the project proceed. That has been included as a condition in the development agreement, and I believe the applicant agrees to that requirement and can speak to that this evening. As you saw in the packet, the commission did hear this item on June 14th. They received no verbal testimony at that time, but there were a few letters of concern that were included in your packet. They were focused mainly on potential traffic impacts associated with developing the property. Those concerns have been addressed through an additional provision in the development agreement that requires the approval of a traffic impact study by the Ada County Highway District prior to any specific use of the property. That will ensure appropriate capacity is available on the impacted roadways, and it could very well require specific improvements prior to any construction. Finally included in the packet was a preliminary analysis by our own Department of Finance and Administration that concluded revenues would exceed the costs associated with serving this area. Again, a phasing plan included in the development agreement provides the city and other agencies the opportunity to revisit and impose additional conditions on subsequent phases in this project. So with that, consistent with the commission's recommendation, we are recommending approval of the annexation this evening. Thank you.
Questions
Mayor?
for Cody? Yes, go ahead.
Cody, to clarify, Boise Fire is presently serving this area?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Bajent, that's correct. If you see the light blue, and that looks horrible on the screen, the light blue is the area requested for annexation, and the light brown or shade of yellow that surrounds the site on 3 sides is already city limits, annex lands that they are serving.
So it wouldn't be the case that annexation or no annexation and fire service somehow puts people at risk or makes people less at risk. The level of service is the level of service regardless of whether it's annexed.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Bajent, I think that's fair. Now, certainly with developing this, there would be more people in the area, not housing, again, largely industrial development, but it doesn't expand the distance by any means, no.
Except that then we do get to, the city will collect revenues that then will allow us to provide a heightened level of service to that area.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Bajent, that's correct, and acquire a site for a future fire station.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor. Thank you. Cody, I have a question, and this may be for the applicant and not you, but we have a potential alignment of the Lake Hazel extension to the Eisenman interchange. And we're basing the zoning on that alignment. My understanding is that at least some portion of that alignment has not really been finalized. And So my question is, if we zone a portion of this based on that alignment and alignment changes, will we have to do a rezone?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Clegg, there was an additional condition in the development agreement that requires, beyond the first phase of this project would have access to existing right-of-way. Any future phases would require dedication or platting of right-of-way. And so another condition recommended for the development agreement is that a preliminary plat be approved that you would see for anything beyond that first phase. And that with that, it goes on to say that it's shown crude road layout and illustrating how the project relates to the anticipated collector arterial roadway, road network, pedestrian facilities be included. So we anticipate the intent of that is that we see it before, the road network is extended beyond what's there today.
Okay, but they're confident that this first section is the right alignment?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Clegg, that first section, this, if you can see where I'm pointing there, this segment of right-of-way is in place.
Yeah, that's in place, right?
This segment would require platting and additional analysis, and that will certainly factor into also ACHD's review of a traffic impact study. So that exact alignment isn't set and wouldn't be set with this.
Okay, so that gets back to my question, which is if that alignment changes, what happens to the zoning that's based on it?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Clegg, that's a good question. I suppose we need to look at modifying the agreement, modifying the development agreement and adjusting those boundaries slightly if that were to
necessary.
change.
Okay.
Correct.
Make accommodation for that so we don't have to go through another rezone if that were the case.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right, looks like no further questions. Jeff, are you representing the applicant tonight? Good to see you. Welcome. Okay.
Madam Mayor, council members, Jeffrey Wardle. I am counsel for the applicant. It is nice to be here with you in person. I think this is the first time in 18 months that I've gotten to be here with you, although we've done quite a few other things. As Cody indicated, this is an application that we have brought forward for an annexation of 120 acres. And as Cody discussed, and what I'm going to do tonight is, it is always nice when you come forward with an application that is exactly what the comprehensive plan comes from. There is no creativity required here. You did that work 10 years ago with Blueprint Boise, and we're pleased to be in a position to implement the planning that you have done and work with our development partners on this site. So tonight, what I'm going to focus on are really the three issues that came up at planning and zoning, and I will address the question that Councilmember Clegg had, because I think you'll have a better understanding of how this all is put together. So as Cody indicated, this is an annexation request related to the 120 acres that are located essentially due east of the intersection of Lake Hazel and the Orchard Extension. At planning and zoning, a question came up about this site. And as Cody had indicated, why is it 120 acres and what about that northwest corner? Well, to start, it is bounded by the city of Boise on three sides. It is in the airport planning area. It has a land use designation for industrial, and we are proposing M1D and C1. And I appreciate Councilmember Clegg's concern because I too do not like having to jump through those hoops. And I think we have the ability to be flexible and get there, and I'll explain in a moment. The question has been posed, why are we not? What is the deal with that northwest 40 acres? BVA and its development partners have actually acquired this property. We closed on it last month, and it consists of a total site that is.
It's doing that.
Yeah, it's cutting out. It's 520 acres total that are part of the acquisition. But as you know, there is a compost facility that is located immediately adjacent to Orchard. The seller is still resolving issues related to that compost facility with the tenant, so we have not yet acquired that 40 acres. However, along the northern boundary, That is contemplated as a collector roadway that is identified there in dark. We have the ability to work through that, and we will be incorporating that 40 acres in the future. Now, we're not as concerned about that 40 acres because that 40 acres is immediately adjacent to industrially zoned property in Syringa Valley. So we think it gives flexibility that that's not the place that we have to spend a lot of time and concern, and it will come in at an appropriate time in the future. As Cody had showed you in the context map, there is also an additional 320 acres to the south of this, immediately to the south, which will facilitate the future extension of Lake Hazel. So that line that you see there, we control the property to the south and that line across there. And then there are some additional parcels that are located outside of this core 320 acres. So Blueprint Boise contemplated this area as being appropriate for your industrial expansion due to the impact of the airport. It is within airport area of influence A, which imposes certain limitations on development, not as onerous as those in B and C, but it is an appropriate use, and the goal encourages industrial and airport related development south of the third runway and in conjunction with the extension of Orchard and Lake Hazel. We began working on this project with ACHD, your staff, and adjoining property owners more than 18 months ago, because obviously the Orchard extension, which has been in process and significant discussions, is key to this, as well as identifying and confirming the extension of Lake Hazel consistent with the plan that you all have previously approved. Additionally, it is contemplated that there needs to be accessory retail and commercial services. And because of Syringa Valley to the west, it's important to provide that buffer. And we contemplate that the appropriate buffer to the residentially zoned areas is going to be that mixture of accessory service commercial, flex light industrial space like and those types of uses that you see at Boise Research Center and some of the others, that is a good transition to the heavier utilization and heavier industrial uses to the east. We also recognize the importance of Lake Hazel Road, and part of the reason the traffic study has been a little bit slower here is we've been working with ACHD on a traffic plan for the total 520 acres. As part of that plan, we will come in with future applications. This is what we have now, but it's about identifying where those arterials go and implementing the plan that you all adopted 10 plus years ago for the Southwest to facilitate the extension of Lake Hazel Road to the east. And the property owner immediately to the east of us is the Department of Lands. And they have been engaged in the conversations. I wouldn't say the Department of Lands thinks about transportation the same way that other property owners do, but they have been at the table. They have been involved in those conversations. They recognize that there are going to be considerations related to their property and its future improvement to get over to Pleasant Valley that necessitates that. And then obviously, as we started working on this, we worked closely with ACHD and in part slowed our application and our initiation of this project so that the planning process for the ultimate alignment of Orchard to the north could be done, because obviously that alignment is important. That alignment helps facilitate moving the heavier traffic of residences to the west and industrial and commercial uses to the east of Orchard. So we think that this is totally consistent with what you contemplated in Blueprint Boise for the industrial use south of the airport. It is the type of light manufacturing, warehousing, multi-tenant industrial space. That's why we've asked for M1 as opposed to a more intensive use. That is what we contemplate because we recognize that the more intensive uses are more appropriate to the east. Now, in going back and looking at this, it is important to note that this was a policy decision that was made when Blueprint Boise was adopted nearly 11 years ago, that you took a hard look at the southwest of the airport and how best to address that And I think coupled with the transportation planning, the airport planning that you've done, the visioning for what is the future role of the third runway, its expansion for service, for fire, for military, for the other uses, make it a site and an area that we have to be sensitive to that. And so we agree, and we think that the industrial designation is appropriate, and what we're bringing in with this first 120 acre phase is consistent with that. Now, the first issue I want to talk about that came up at planning and zoning were concerns about water. We recognize and don't discount the concerns of the property owners in the county up on Holly Lynn, that they express concerns about their wells. Well, because of the nature of the industrial use that we're proposing, we have been in discussions with Suez for well over a year on how to facilitate this. This project will be served by Suez to meet the requirements for the industrial development. And more importantly, it facilitates the interconnectivity of Suez's system with the 16-inch main that Suez is contemplating expanding in Gowan Road and then connecting over through Syringa Valley to the southwest. This also facilitates meeting the pressure requirements and other things by bringing that service from the east. So there are other industrial users out there off of Pleasant Valley that have been in conversations, but I would just point yourselves to the blue and green at the top, that those are the improvements, which will be 16-inch extensions and 12-inch extensions that will then connect to the water that has been brought through Lake Hazel. And we think it improves operations and it minimizes some of the concerns that you've heard about wells, especially wells on Holly Lynn, because this phase is not being served by that. Transportation. When the 2008 Lake Hazel Gowan relocation alignment study was done, it was clear that the cooperation of private property owners would be integral to making the connection that's been contemplated over to Eisman. This really is the process by which you are able to initiate that process. We also recognize that with the Southwest Boise Transportation Study, which really kicked off that Lake Hazel connection, that it was identified that making that connection not only of Lake Hazel to Orchard, but then Orchard to Pleasant Valley was
Madam
integral to
Mayor,
making the
time.
transportation flow. We have done that. This was contemplated. This is the plan, and we implement it.
Great.
And with that, I would stand for any questions you have.
Thanks.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
So Jeff, you indicated that you've done a lot of thinking about the road alignment, I guess. Is it because of that you're confident that you've got the alignment in the place that will need it? Or is there a way to accommodate whatever zoning would be north and south of it, depending on where it gets aligned?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Clegg, I think the concern, and going back to what Cody talked about with the conditions of approval, as we talk about phase one is really that eastern 80 acres. Okay. So we know that we're going to have to come from the intersection of Lake Hazel and Orchard, and we're going to have to make that extension across at some point there. But we know that we're going to have to get from point A to point B. As we've worked with ACHD, the biggest concern for the initial alignment isn't necessarily this segment, it's the segments as you travel to the east and how far south you take them. Because this really is the alignment, because you're not going to come straight across to the Department of Lands. I am sensitive because I don't want to have to come back and rezone little pieces. But the nice thing that we're talking about here is we will be back in front of you, because as Cody indicated, as we come in with a preliminary plat and as we come forward those other things, we're going to have to clean that up. And so realistically, phase one is the eastern 120 acres, because that's what we need for that use. And so we know that we have ACHD jurisdictional right-of-way claim across the north there, which is that dark line. We know that Lake Hazel has to come across. So those 2 points are fixed. And then when we talk about the ultimate alignment, those are conversations that we'll continue to have with Department of Lands, with ACHD, with your staff, because that's the critical part for the part below. Because the intention obviously is that Lake Hazel will be a mobility arterial with limited points of access. And so that's why, as part of our conversations with ACHD, it's recognized that, you know, coming over to that southern boundary is where you're going to have that mid-mile, that mid-block connection. And so I'm comfortable for what we're trying to do that we get there. I'm also comfortable, Madam Mayor and Council President Clegg, that as we come back with phase two likely becomes 2A and 2B, which is the incorporation of the 40 acres in the northwest corner, and then an additional 80 acres to the south. Because obviously, if we're going to be dedicating the right of way and making the initial roadway improvements that are necessary to facilitate that extension, we want to get it right, and you're going to incur the cost. So get it in, get it done. And that's why, as we talk to your staff about what was the best way to come in with this application, knowing that of the 520 acres that we've either acquired or have the right to acquire, that 480 are outside of the city of Boise. In light of House Bill 389, we worked very closely to come up with a size of application that doesn't adversely affect your budget, that addresses the immediate service needs, as with the fire department. And we're having those conversations and we're amenable to that. So I feel pretty comfortable with that, because this isn't a situation where we're going to get caught with and have to come back and do an application. We'll be able to couple that either with the preliminary plat or with the annexation for the property immediately to the south.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, follow up if I could. Just a little bit about the timing of your phasing, and this has to do with the fire service. If we end up with a fire site, how long before you'll be building enough that we'll be able to collect enough revenue to do something with that site?
Well, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Clegg, Council President Clegg, the reality is that we have an 80-acre industrial user who we're looking to address initially. So the first phase is going to be substantial. I think from your staff's evaluation, it contemplated a 2 to 3 year build out. Because of what we own, we have the ability to work with fire to identify the appropriate location, because in our mind, the appropriate location for the fire is, for the 4-acre fire site, 2 to 4 acre fire site, is probably on Orchard, and it may be a little bit farther south, in recognition of the future growth of Syringa Valley and the future property that we have there. So we have the ability to do that, but obviously we will also be paying impact fees, public safety impact fees, immediately in phase one.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, it doesn't look like there are any more questions now.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. The neighborhood association is South Cole. We don't expect that South Cole is here to testify, but I did want to check in.
No, Madam Mayor.
Great. Their president was here earlier, and I figured if she wasn't still here. Is anybody in the room here to testify on this item? Anybody online?
No, Madam Mayor.
All right.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
we did receive late correspondence. I think everyone got a copy
Yes.
of it.
Thank you.
At their desk.
Yeah, there's an article here related to fire service that from Brent Coles that we will put into the record, and we got it at the break. So I think we've all been able to review it. And with that, unless you'd like to rebut yourself. Oh, no.
Madam Mayor, Jeff Wardle, you have my address. I guess if you have any concerns about fire raised by whatever late correspondence, we would want to be able to answer that. But we've been hypersensitive to it, because from the very beginning, if we're going to have industrial users, we have to meet their needs. And so that's why we've had the discussion with staff. Ton Peterson has a meeting scheduled with Romeo Gervais next week. And we're ready, willing, and able to proceed that way. So we think there's adequate fire service and there's adequate water.
Thank you. All right, and with that, I'll go ahead and close the hearing and the items before you. Yes.
Zoning designations of C1D, neighborhood commercial with design review. Sorry, now my mic was off. Do I need to start over? Okay, so 16 acres with C1D and M1D on 99.4 acres.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Many of the council members know and community members that this is an area that I've long worked to ensure that we did get the right kind of development, that industrial development around the airport with the ability to help with the infrastructure needs out there is in fact what is called for in Blueprint Boise, and just excited to see this moving forward.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
I agree with Council President. What additionally made me really happy about this was I think that we have so many areas of the city where there's a lot of residential development and there's not many employment opportunities nearby. So I think that this will give some employment opportunities where there haven't been some in the past near newer development, so that people might not have to travel so far to get to work, which I think is really great. So thanks.
Madam Mayor? I'm in agreement with everything that's said. I'm going to take a quick crack at this fire issue because we did get some late testimony on it. And the thrust of the testimony was by annexing this property without having fire service in place, we will be putting everyone's lives and property at higher risk, as well as the men and women you are in charge of. Well, of course, the Boise Fire Department is already serving this area, and this development allows us to fund and build the fire infrastructure that it's going to need. So I'm sensitive to the concern, and I'm sensitive to the testimony from this person, particularly because there was a mayoral administration 20 years ago that put us in a real situation with this park property and poor planning and poor infrastructure fees sufficient to support the promises that are made to the community. So I take this concern seriously, but this is what is going to allow us to provide the fire service that this community needs there. And so I'll be supporting the motion.
All right. Well, with that, I just want to say I won't be voting, but I want to thank the applicant for your patience in this. This was first presented to the city as we were waiting to see the economic impacts of the property tax legislation at the State House. And so appreciate the willingness to just hold for a bit while we looked at the impacts, waiting to see what would be brought to the legislature, but also afterwards with the analysis. Because as you've seen in communities around this valley, there are true impacts to the legislation that did come out of the State House with regard to their ability to allow development, annex, and provide for the services that they need to provide for. And so in working together, pausing and while we were waiting to see what happened, but then really doing the analysis that was necessary, I just really appreciate that, because we know going into this that despite the impacts that the legislation will have, that our residents are sound in this instance. And so I want to make that clear.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Woodings.
Yes.
Agent,
Yes.
Clegg,
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you all. We've got one more item. It is SOS. Is it you again, Cody? 2108.
You're stuck with me again, Madam Mayor.
Well, nobody was moving, so I was afraid that I was jumping ahead and there was another motion related to this application. Okay, go ahead.
This item is an appeal of the Planning and Zoning Commission denial to a waiver of a subdivision ordinance. That waiver was to allow the creation of double fronted lots or double fronted lot with vehicular access to each frontage. That request, as you saw in the record, was denied by the Planning and Zoning Commission in May. The property in question is addressed at 214 West Circleway Drive. That's comprised actually of two corner lots that were each platted back in the 50s. The property is currently occupied by a single family residence along with two carports. Now, the applicant received approval to consolidate the parcels administratively earlier this year. That consolidation again created a double fronted lot, which are generally prohibited. The exception, though, is when there are unusual circumstances or topography exist to allow it. The property is certainly unique in that regard. And again, the consolidation was granted, but it did include very specific conditions that limited vehicular access to one street frontage. And that was based on the very specific development standards you can see on this, hopefully on the screen, if I can share it, sorry. So after receiving approval, the applicant indicated a desire that they wanted to maintain 2 existing access points. One on the front, one on Circle Way on the south, and another along Horizon Drive to the north. They also wanted to add a 3rd access point on the western side of the property. Because that arrangement is prohibited by code, they did request that waiver from the subdivision ordinance. As detailed in your packet, the commission did deny the request. They found the waiver could potentially result in safety concerns. They also found it to be inconsistent with the comprehensive plan that does aim to reduce driveway approaches. And that standard is for both aesthetic and environmental reasons. And again, so the applicant has appealed the decision this evening. They've provided 3 grounds, and I'd like to just briefly touch on each. First, they believe that the 3 driveway approaches are required to prevent hardship. They would like to have parking access from each level of the property. Again, this is certainly a unique property, but there appear to be solutions that don't require 3 separate access points. So from our perspective, it would be difficult to find an error in the commission's decision in this regard. The second ground relates to safety. The appellant contains that the driveway arrangement will not create safety concerns. They suggest the fact that ACHD granted approval justifies the design. And it is true that ACHD did approve the new access point. That driveway combined with 2 access points that are already in existence from our perspective and the commission's does create a potential for conflict. As you can see in the pictures shown here, the combination of vegetation and slope certainly do create some challenges from a visibility perspective. Now that might be remedied with removal of vegetation, but we're certainly not a proponent of that to justify the waiver that was before the commission. The final ground, the appellant suggests the power line and topography of the site preclude the use of a single access. This is a hillside lot, and if you can see faintly on the screen, power lines do cross the parcel, again, in the general alignment of the original underlying lot line. I think it's important to remember, though, that these parcels were intentionally combined, and so in some ways, the applicant is kind of creating this situation with the consolidation. So with that, the commission had difficulty seeing where there was justification for the waiver, and we don't see an error in this regard. I believe I touched on each of the grounds briefly. We want to acknowledge there doesn't appear to be any public opposition to this request. In fact, in your packet were only letters of support, but there are clear code provisions precluding access under this arrangement, and the commission didn't find justification to waive those requirements. So with that, we are recommending denial of the appeal this evening. Thank you.
Are there questions for Cody?
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
a couple of questions. First, Cody, you indicated that the applicant purposely combined these lots and perhaps created their own problem by doing that. While I understand that this is now officially a double-fronted lot, I guess my question has to do with whether we make any distinction between the kind of roadway that it's double-fronted on. I happen to know this area very well. It's in my neighborhood. I've visited it many times, and the roadway in question really functions as a lane. There's only 5 lots on it. It has very little traffic. It doesn't go anywhere else, so no one else uses it except the people who live there or are visiting there. And so my question is whether or not this policy was written, I think, for 2 more equal, if you will, equal use roadways. I wondered if any of that factored into the discussions you guys had.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Clegg, I guess from my perspective, I agree. I think that the code language was probably written for a situation where maybe you have a collector or arterial and then a local street and was to preclude that. The language itself is written fairly black and white, but it doesn't make a distinction in the code. But you're right. It could be found that it's fairly unique and these are very low traffic volume local streets. So that didn't come up a whole lot before, but
Okay.
certainly valid.
And then the second question is you surmise that there might be a different solution. And maybe is it out of school to talk about what that different solution might be tonight?
Oh, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Clegg, certainly I think that you could, the two access points, two of the access points, perhaps not on opposite, kind of the opposite frontages would simply be allowed. So I think if the applicant were willing to choose there, the decision kind of goes away. It's really these two access points that are on the opposite frontages that become the issue.
Okay. Thank you.
Further questions? All right, then we'll go ahead and hear from the appellant. And the applicant, I guess same thing.
Hello, I'm Mark Sweepy, and I'm joined by my lovely wife Denise Sweepy.
So
Yes,
I just want to make sure, Mark, that Mark is the same as Donald.
It is, I go by my middle name.
Okay,
so
and my
it
brother
is.
does that too. He goes
Yeah.
by his middle name. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Madam
Welcome.
Mayor and council members for having us here and sharing your time on what might appear to be a pretty small issue, but compared to your agenda, it seems pretty small, but certainly not trivial to us and very important to us. The Planning and Zoning Commission concluded that two driveways are not warranted because both limited mobility access to our home and requested garage access can be achieved from a single driveway. However, these two objectives cannot be met by one driveway due to the power line easement and the topography of the property as communicated by our architect who's worked this, Kathy Sewell, in a report. The garage can only be built where clearance to the power line is provided. It cannot be built up on horizon, as the council member concluded. This location that we plan to build the garage on West Circle Way is the location that provides the clearance to the power line. However, this location has a steep incline that precludes limited mobility access. There's a 14-foot climb and 24 steps that would come up the hill to the front door of our home, to the level access to our home. Construction of a ramp is not practical from this location. This is the only remaining off-street parking that would be provided if the waiver is denied. Continued use of the existing Horizon Drive driveway provides this needed limited mobility access to our home. So two driveways are requested. These driveways would not pose a public safety risk. They meet or exceed all ACHD requirements. HCAD has approved both of these driveways. The Horizon Drive driveway does not pose a public safety risk as incorrectly concluded by staff. In fact, the ACHD requirements for sightline distance are far exceeded due to our driveway being on the outside of that curve of Horizon Drive. We can clearly see far up the hill on Horizon Drive, as well as you can see down on O'Farrell. There is no public safety risk for retaining that Horizon Drive driveway. Furthermore, the ACHD requirements for distance from the intersection is also met. They approved that. While in general, we see that tight roadway turns could pose a risk, clearly they do not at this property because we're on the outside of the turn, not the inside of the turn. Entry from Horizon Drive to the driveway is actually less than 90 degrees. There is no sharp turn there as we come up Horizon. Further, the committee likely denied our waiver request, at least partially based on the general concept that multiple access points are unsafe. We get it. However, the traffic flow along our property does not pose this risk. The traffic would not cross both of our existing and our planned driveways. The Horizon Drive traffic continues on to O'Farrell. There's no desire for them to turn onto West Circle Way. Likewise, our 5 neighbors on West Circle Way do not turn and go up Horizon Drive. They turn left and go down O'Farrell. If this was a public safety risk, then ACHD would have already concluded that and would not have supported our plan. All of our neighbors have reviewed our proposed improvements and have approved the plans, including the replacement of our unsightly carport with a garage that has been designed to aesthetically match our home. Cody made a point that I'm trying to remember. Oh, regarding the property owners got themselves into this fix because they consolidated properties. The consolidation of the property is required to build the garage that we desire. We can't build the garage without consolidating the properties because we have to build the garage where the distance from the power line is provided. And that is on that lower portion of West Circle Way. This waiver request seems to, the debate seems to center around what a hardship is. And we were referred to the code for variance approval, which provides really little guidance. It reads something to the effect hardship associated with the property itself. Well, we maintain that there is in fact a hardship associated with the property in the way of the combined power line easement and the topography, the steep climb from the only access from which the garage can be built and adequate off-street parking as possible, and a very limited setback on another entry. Entry to our home from this back door would mean parking on West Circle Way in an unsafe transition from the steepest portion of West Circle Way to a set of 4 steps. These steps are not even on our property. The recent survey shows them on the street right of way. There isn't sufficient space on our property to make improvement to these steps or to construct a ramp. In fact, this portion of West Circle Way is steeper than the maximum gradient allowed by code for a limited mobility ramp, a 1 in 6 slope. It'd be wonderful if I could move the house, but I can't. The house was built before the code even existed, most likely. And unfortunately, there's very limited setback on that side. And so there's no improvement we can make to make it any safer than it currently exists. Curb cuts. It seems to be a misleading term, at least in our neighborhood. In fact, there are no curbs to cut on either West Circle Way or Horizon Drive. There are no sidewalks. The curb on Horizon is a continuous rolled curb. There is no cut. We appreciate that access from properties to streets should be minimized. We get it again. In fact, the way I read Blue Point Boise, use of common driveways and other design innovations should be used in foothills developments to reduce the quantity of curb cuts on roadways in the foothills and reduce the area of impervious surface in developments. Clearly, a common driveway for this single residence with a single garage does not apply. Design innovation, we have proposed to planning and zoning staff that we plan to convert the existing gravel driveway from Horizon Drive to one using pervious concrete. We'll seek approval at ACHD and the hillside drainage personnel pending your approval. Please consider the facts and specifics of this property in weighing your decision. Decide in light of this being a consolidation of 2 properties that have functioned safely with multiple access points, perhaps since the origin of the home in 1953. This is not a new subdivision with alternative solutions. That is a clean slate. We have many constraints. We shall make improvements wisely and with safety in mind, but the improvements cannot be accomplished by one driveway due to the power line easement and the topography. We, our architect, and our neighbors have spent considerable effort and have demonstrated that the public welfare will be protected while the property is improved. Thank you so much for your attention. Are there any questions?
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
did someone go before me?
No, go ahead.
I feel I feel like I should know the answer to this question already, but I'm going to ask anyway. So we've got 3 proposed access points that are on there. 2 of them are already there, correct?
2 of them are there, yes.
Yeah,
The one
and-
off Horizon and the one essentially at the back door.
And then there's the third one that you're asking for as well, but really you're just asking for 2.
Well, let me correct this. There are currently 3 access points. There's one off Horizon, the gravel driveway that we wish to retain and do pervious material. There's the carport that is an access from the opposite side of the lot. And then there's a third, there's an upper carport that gains us access to the upper part of our house. There are currently 3.
And Madam Mayor, follow up. So you're not asking for 3, you're asking for 2 of the 3 that already exist.
Please, we're asking for 2. One is the existing gravel driveway. One is for the new garage where access distance from the power line is provided. We will close down the carport on the lower portion of West Circle Way, and we will close down the upper carport. So we wish to go from 3 currently to 2.
And what I guess I'm having a hard time understanding, I understand what you just said there. So you're wishing to go from 3 to 2, but there's still 3 proposed sites on there. So which are the 2 that you're actually wanting to get?
Sure.
And I don't know why I'm not understanding this, but
So let me point out the 3 currently. They're in purple.
yep.
This is the upper carport off West Circle.
Mark, could you just pull the mic down so that
Sorry. This is the carport off West Circle Way. There is currently access to this carport that's not shown in purple. And there's currently the Horizon Drive gravel driveway that I talked about. We will close this one. We will close that one. We wish to retain that one since it gives us a limited mobility access, level access to our home. And we have to have this one for the garage in order to clear the power lines.
Great. Yeah, that makes sense. I think I was thrown off on the one in our lower right-hand corner because it shows that as another proposed access point.
It's not proposed. That's the unsightly carport that we wish to eliminate by building the garage here.
Gotcha. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Madam Mayor, I just want to clarify, at the planning and zoning hearing, were you asking for all 3?
Yes, we were.
Okay.
I feel we were.
So now you've concluded that the lower carport, or the upper carport, sorry, I'm a little backwards, would be removed and
Yes.
that access closed.
Yeah, we've since then found better use for that area,
Okay.
and we can close it.
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome.
Madam Mayor.
yes.
Okay, so my question is regarding the garage and shop access. So you have a potential approach from Horizon Drive, and then the grade going down is too steep to provide safe access to the garage, correct?
Or to the home, the way I see it. Maybe I didn't understand your question.
I guess what I'm trying to figure out is the hardship in gaining access to your garage.
Yeah, it's not hardship in access to the garage, it's hardship for access to the home.
Right, which is why you're requesting sorry, Madam Mayor. Which is why you're requesting access from Horizon Drive, correct?
To retain that driveway
Right.
on Horizon Drive, which provides that level access, yes.
Okay, so I understand the hardship there and I understand, why you're doing that. I actually used to live right down the street from this. So I know this whole street very well. We always admired it. And so I guess what I'm trying to figure out is why another driveway on Circle Way? Is that for parking? Is that the one that's proposed for access to the
Yeah, so let
garage?
me describe. So that is required to gain access to the garage, which cannot be provided from that Horizon Drive driveway because you can't fit the garage both on that driveway and under the power lines. There's insufficient clearance from that driveway, from the top of the garage to the power lines. So it cannot be built there. Has to be built with access in an area that provides you height from the garage to the power line.
So that the garage can be lower.
Yes, remember,
Okay.
this is a sloping
Yeah.
hillside. So as you go down that hillside, the garage gets lower and lower in respect to the power lines.
Can we go back to, there was a picture, was it, or maybe it's just in the packet, the renderings that show how the garage is lower than the house? I think I saw it in the,
57, maybe.
if I looked at the renderings correctly, I think it was showing.
Madam Mayor, I think I have a question for Cody too.
Sure, go ahead.
Cody, where the applicant is now saying that they do not want the access from that other frontage, kind of the opposite frontage from Horizon, is this appeal kind of moot at this point? Can they legally take access from Horizon and that garage access without having a variance?
Well, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Woodings, the code's pretty black and white in terms of you get one access from one frontage. But we would certainly, if it was just down to those two, that's a very similar scenario to a corner lot that is not regulated. And so if that was the case again today, we would certainly support that. And I think there's definitely, unique circumstance, topography, the power lines that would support those two, as was described this evening, kind of that compromise solution.
I think we're just waiting for the pictures, or
Sorry.
did you look at the pictures while I was talking to Elaine?
No.
Okay.
There you go, that one. Yeah.
Good. I think these are great visuals just to explain the having to use stairs where the garage is compared to the house, and then why you'd want to be able to enter at street level without having to use stairs for those that can't use the stairs.
Right.
That's why I thought this, given the questions around the garage, this might be helpful. Assuming that that's actually the bottom one, the garage is lower than the house, yes? Yeah.
Here's a
okay.
good picture here where this would be the apron of the garage down in West Circle Way. And there are 24 steps that would lead up to the level of our entry to our home up here.
And you can't build that garage on the other driveway because then it's too tall for the power line.
It won't fit under the power lines.
But you need to have a spot. The other driveway that exists allows someone that can't take those stairs to enter your house. At
And
ground level.
basically, it's simply a parking spot for people with limited mobility. I've crushed a hip already. Yeah. So my wife is well aware, with all the Band-Aids in the house, that the possibility of another injury is, it needs us to consider level access to our homes, quite simply.
Any other questions?
Madam Mayor, a question for Cody that's procedural, potentially. It doesn't look like we're going to have any other testimony. I think you answered this, but we would still have to uphold the appeal in order to find two sites, right? Yeah.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Clegg, that's correct. And again, with the two and not,
Yeah.
it's very similar treatment to
I thought
to a
that's what
corner
I
lot.
heard. I just wanted to clarify that.
I think there certainly are. We would suggest there is perhaps unique circumstances, hardship there in that scenario.
Madam Mayor, I guess question for Cody and then for the applicant. They're related, and it may not matter at this point with what's been brought up. But had they just used the existing driveways that were there, would they have had to have gotten rid of one of those based off the city code? Or if they would have just used the existing driveways, would those have been grandfathered in?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Halliburton, if they would have used the existing driveways as the two original parcels that we started with, no. But the act of consolidating them kind of put them in this situation.
Great. And then Madam Mayor, the question for the applicant then would be, did you consider using the existing driveways rather than adding new ones when you created the plan?
We did not, because you cannot build a garage until you consolidate those properties into one. So we had to go down the road of consolidating the properties. In so doing, and the requirement to build a garage with clearance to the power lines, this plan was our only recourse.
Madam Mayor, just some clarity there. The question wasn't necessarily consolidating the lots, but like the position where the driveways currently are, the three that are existing there. Could you have used the three existing driveways without having to move any of them to have gotten all the things that you wanted with your plan, or did one of those driveways have to be moved in order to create the plan that you wanted? Does that make sense?
It does. Aesthetically, we had to move the driveway. Aesthetically, right now, the carport is low enough that, and small enough that we still have a front yard and you're not looking at a big garage. If we would have retained that location and build the garage there, and certainly that was a consideration very early, the garage would be that much higher and bigger, and the front of the house would be staring at the back end of the garage. It makes much more sense. It's a better improvement to the property to have the garage along the side, so you retain the front yard, you retain the view to the lower property from the front yard, and that's why we chose the location that we did.
Any further questions? All right. Nobody else is here. I know that you're here, but you're part of the application. Anybody online?
No, Madam Mayor.
All right. Well, with that, then, is there anything more you want to say?
I'm sorry, I have to whine,
Would you like
Madam
to
Mayor,
rebut
just a little bit.
yourself?
Our architect pursued the idea that we were on a corner lot, actually a dual corner lot. And we did not get any, your respect, Cody, we did not get any attention or any alternative guidance on what another solution would be in the view of corner lots. And so this is where we are now. So we've tried and we spent quite a bit of time and honestly money with our architect in putting various plans together. And we truly believe this is the one that makes entire sense.
Thanks.
Welcome.
Madam Mayor,
Oh, yeah.
I do have a question either for Cody or for the fine folks behind me. And that this is different than what the Planning and Zoning Commission reviewed because aspects of the plan have changed a little bit. We're down to 2, et cetera. And so I'm just having a hard time figuring out how to apply the appeal standards to that. We're reviewing a proposal that's different than the record we're reviewing. And how do we do this?
Well, I think the council president might have a solution. It is something, I'm just jumping in rather than Cody. It is something that over the years, the council has addressed and with different types of motions can substitute what they're reviewing. Okay, with that, I'm going to close the hearing.
Okay, well, Madam Mayor, with that, I will give this a shot and then explain myself if I get a second. I would move that we uphold the appeal on SOS 21-8 for Donald and Denise Sweep at 214 Circle Way partially by granting 2 driveway accesses, one from Horizon Drive and one from Circle Drive on the west side of the lot, as depicted in the drawings, based on the fact that there is a hardship due to both topography and an existing power line to be able to have both an accessible access point and a garage access point.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there a discussion?
Madam Mayor, so I'm saying partially uphold the appeal, partially because the the original ruling was based on the 3 access points and not on the 2. And the Planning and Zoning Commission apparently did not consider just having the 2 access points, as I've read the record, or if they did, concluded that they weren't able to move from 3 to 2. I think the 3 access points would have been excessive, but I think the 2, given the topography, the power line, the mobility, accessibility issues due to the topography and the current location of the existing home, all point to this as a good solution without finding error in the Planning and Zoning Commission's finding that 3 access points would have been excessive.
Discussion? Alrighty. Looks like there's none.
Madam Mayor, I guess there maybe is a little discussion. I apologize. So some clarification from Council President Clegg. We are upholding the appeal. And then we are granting, what is it that we're upholding the appeal, but then we're putting what forward?
Thank you. The decision of the Planning and Zoning Commission was to allow only 1 access point. And the request before Planning and Zoning was for 3 access points. So we're upholding the appeal and partially changing the decision of the Planning and Zoning Commission from 1 access point to 2.
Great.
Based on the hardship and the topography.
Yeah, and Madam Mayor, I think what I'm running into here is that I agree with the conclusion. I agree with where we're going. And I guess I'm confident that we're doing it the right way and that maybe I just don't understand what we're doing. What I maybe am struggling with a little bit in my head is that I think when you spoke, you used the term hardship and that they were experiencing a hardship. From my point of view, with the 3 existing driveways that were available and the options that were there, maybe there was an opportunity for that to be for a different design to have taken place. And so in my head, I'm not necessarily comfortable with saying that there truly was a hardship and that that was an error from the commission. I don't think that you're saying that either. I'm saying that we're looking at this. I guess what I'm understanding is that we're looking at this as a whole different thing than what the Planning and Zoning Commission saw. And if that's what we're saying, then I'm comfortable with that going forward.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, if I could respond to that.
Mm-hmm.
To me, the hardship is not that they could have had 3 access points by not moving any of them, and that we're only allowing 2. The hardship is the location of the power line and the location of the existing residence and the ability to visit that existing residence if you're accessible. If you have accessibility issues from the lower site and the inability from the upper site to build a garage due to the power line and the topography.
Yeah, I appreciate the clarity there. Thank you. My brain was just processing probably a little bit slower than everyone else's.
Madam Mayor, I appreciate the effort towards a solution. And I guess the way that I think about it is, first, did the Planning and Zoning Commission make an error with what it had in front of it? And I don't think it did. So then the next question is what to do with the changed plan. And I think I understand the council president's motion and reasoning, but I still have concerns about 2 primary access points on those slopes. Like apparently 3/4 of the council, I used to live on this street too. And that stretch of Horizon Drive is nasty. I lived there in the snowpocalypse and it is no joke, right? It is 12 or 14% on an off-camber slope and a turn. And the Planning and Zoning Commission considered this and they rejected it as a safety concern. And so when I go back and look with the revised plan at what Planning and Zoning considered, I still don't see an error there. So, we say uphold the appeal. I think we mean grant the appeal, and I would uphold the Planning and Zoning Commission decision here.
Alrighty, I see we have a vote.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Woodings,
Yes.
Bajent,
No.
Clegg,
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
5 in favor, 1 opposed, motion passes.
All right,
Madam Mayor, I move we adjourn.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thanks, everybody.